Okay. So, we're going live like a Swiss watch. Not sure if Swiss are making watches. They probably do. But they say so. It's like a Swiss watch. Hi, everybody. 3 p.m. in Los Angeles, and welcome to another LA Colorist Meetup. And I'm so happy to see you all here. Let me just quickly check who's dialing in, who's there. Alejandro is there. Hello, Alejandro. Soft Light Color. I'm not sure we had you Soft Light Color before. It's the first time I see you, so welcome. It's good to see you here. Then we have Nicolas Pantris. Tell us also where you are. Luca from Italy. Hello, Luca. That's very good. And Pedro is here. And Brandon. Hey, Brandon. Good to see you. Good to see you as well. So I'm so happy to see you again. And then Buenos Aires is with us, everybody. So this is Alonso or Abruzzo production. Abrazzo production. Oh, yes, Abrazzo is like a kiss, I believe. Something like that. So I think maybe I should be speaking in Spanish a little bit. I think we have a predominantly Spanish crowd today, which is no surprise because our guest is from Spain. And, I can see that, we have maybe I should switch on the Spanish subtitles if you want, no? Okay, Lynette is here with us. Hello, Lynette. Good to see you. Good to see you again. Thank you. And then we have a Jordan from New York and Christoph from Poland. Hello. And James from San Francisco. Hello. James, I was actually the other day going through some photos from our classroom and I saw you like still with your long hair. And I remember that actually those days. Then whom we have Leonardo and Francisco Jose. Hello, everybody. Very good. When we have someone from Vancouver, Daniel. Fantastic. Welcome. It's always good to. This is the best thing about the colorist community. We are very global, and I think we are a small community, but really tightly knit. So before we go with the official program, I just really wanted to give you a couple of things. Just some sort of news that we have. First of all, as I said, today we're going to be, introducing you to next version of Mistika. I am actually really impressed with it. I saw it the other day and I really like it. Actually, let me just quickly go and just show you a couple of things that I have prepared for you. Number one, I want to congratulate to all the winners from our last meetup. As you remember, we gave 5 licenses of Enterprise Frame.io and 5 courses. So believe it or not, Lynette won it again. Lynette has a subscription or direct line to God. I don't know how she does it, but she's winning these prizes. I actually checked 3 times. Guys, there's no way anybody could have guessed. We got numbers randomly, and it was Lynette again. Very good. And it was great. I ended up chatting. Actually, I tried to contact with each one of you when you win something. I'm really curious to see how everybody's doing. Also, I spoke to Roberto Negron in Puerto Rico. He's doing a great Amazon show from his daughter's bedroom. But, he's making an Amazon HDR grading there. Fantastic. Ryan, he has a great company in Burbank. And, he was telling me, about the most challenging day of his life, like the Friday when everything got shut down and everything what was happening. I have to say, I do feel for all owners of post-production companies. I think, everybody had to really make tough decisions and decide how and to deal with the situation. So it is very, very challenging. So feel for all of them. And then, Colin, won, and Brian and Stephen and Justin and Jamie, they won the training. And then Tom got himself a trial for this kind of virtual system that Jeff was presenting. Also, I have some big news to announce with the color training. We have now developed a new enrollment period. It starts on 1st of May. 1st of May, used to be, when I used to live in Europe, a big and major bank holiday. It was a day when everybody, gets a day off. Usually it's a springtime and it's a sunny and it's a big celebration. So I thought it's a good day to make this kind of, start of the new training program. So what we got is basically we got several self-paced online courses, completely new courses. So we have a whole ACES workflow. We have a course for data management. It's something that's been suggested to us a few times because people need to start managing data, uploading to the cloud, between the clouds and so on. So we got the training for that. We finally got in like a full coverage of all the options for color managed grading for DaVinci Resolve. We are bringing Dolby Vision online, just because there is requests, especially from Latin America, for shows that need to finish and people need to know how to do it. And also dailies. And the reason why I'm bringing dailies again is because we are expecting the moment things open that there's going to be so many production trying to shoot at the same time that actually demand is going to be very high for dailies colorists. So even if you have not graded dailies in the past, I wouldn't sit and wait for the final grade to come through. I would jump on and start doing some dailies work, and it's, I think, great way for you guys to kind of catch up and see how to do dailies, what's happening at the moment and how things are working. Also, this is primarily, again, aimed at productions. It seems that, some parts of the world are going to open sooner than the others, and that, productions are going to start shooting, maybe July. The things we don't know at the moment, but this is what's happening. And because of that, and because of travel restrictions, we've decided to make a virtual classroom training. So what that is basically, I will be sitting live 2 hours a day for 4 days and working with you on the most important, class that we have, which is the color managed workflow that you need to master if you want to deliver to Netflix or Amazon or to HBO, basically. And also this is that local 700 supported course, guys. So all of those details, as I said, will be coming live on the 1st of May. And, you can register your interest on color training. We're going to put a new website very soon. So without further ado, I just really want now to go to my guests we are like a mix now. We are now in Madrid and we are also in London or near London. So hello, SGO.
Hello.
Hi, hello.
Very good. Okay, good. There's always like a moment. Do we hear each other? Is everything working? So I'm happy. I'm happy. So I want to just make a little round of introduction first. So we have Eva with us. Eva is probably person
Hi.
you guys are going to be contacting first. She's your customer manager, and she worries a little bit about what's happening on the website. And Eva is the friendly face of the company. So get to know Eva.
Hi, hello.
Okay.
Thanks
No, thank you, Eva, for organizing this. You were great. Thank you for that. And then we have Adrian. Adrian is actually, motion graphic artist himself, and he does a lot of effects work himself, and actually does also some creative work for the marketing side of the company. So and of course Mistika user. So it's actually really, really good to have somebody demo the system for us who's actually really using it every day. So I am so happy that Adrian, you're here with us. How are you doing, Adrian?
Really good. Thank you for having us today here.
You're welcome. So I was actually, when we were preparing this, I was a little bit worried because it's going to be very late in Spain, but Adrian told me, don't worry, we're Spanish. We kind of live life. Exactly. I remember last time I was in Barcelona, I had a dinner at 11 p.m. So, and then we have Jeff, and I'm going to now focus a little bit on Jeff. Jeff is a true industry veteran, and one of my most favorite product managers that I've met, and I really love how Jeff is running SGO, and how he's pivoting the company and what's happening. For you guys that are not so familiar with Mistika, I want to just give you a little bit of a background. Basically, that Mistika really came out big when stereoscopic production was happening, and I actually remember I was doing at that time already some 3D jobs, and I was about to land a massive contract, and we needed Mistika because that was the best thing and the only thing that you could do, and I said, okay, we're gonna go and buy one. I went for a lunch. I remember it was at the Hospital Club. Remember, I remember these stupid details. I don't know why. And then we had the chat, and he said, "Okay, Dado, yes, we could make it." And then he gave me a quote. It was a lot of money. I can't remember exactly how much it was. It was a lot. But in any case, I said, "Fine, Jeff, this is what we need to have. It makes financially sense for us because we're having these projects coming through." However, the company that was going to do the productions didn't do it. As it happens in film, sometimes big things don't happen. And Jeff, I bought a 2-bedroom apartment for that same money that I was going to pay for the Mistika. And I still have that apartment. It's not in a glorious part of London. It's like Harlesden, but you get me. It was a value of a 2-bedroom apartment. This is how expensive Mistika was. And it is no surprise that not many facilities had it. You really had to have a special need for something like that. And now we are here on the 23rd of April, 2020. Jeff, tell me, what is happening at SGO and with Mistika?
Well, stitch images together, and that's great. So lots of people have been using that. So it's our first one. So we have other technologies that we're putting out, like Mistika Workflows is coming out next week, which is about sort of media and content management. But people also wanted to use, like, all the flexibility we have in Mistika Ultima and have access to that technology. And importantly, the color correction side. We're actually, again, quite well known for having exceptionally good color science. But as a product, there's a huge amount to sort of learn, and actually the user interface is probably something that hasn't evolved over time. So we embarked on a project after lots of listening, lots of talking with different people, different colorists, to find out how can we unlock the performance and the tool set that we have, so everyone can find it much easier to use, much easier to learn, and start to really embrace that technology that we have. So we were going to an AB, obviously, this week, actually, where we would have been launching Mistika 10. So we've actually launched Mistika 10 this week online, which is why it's great to be able to come and now show people today actually what we're doing with that. But it is kind of like a new foundation for us. It's a new place to start with, something that we've been obviously doing for many, many years, and now unlocking that usability, and maybe have some new tools in there and some things that now people have not been used to being able to do. We're going to make it easy for them to do that. And so you could ask, or you could say that potentially Mistika 10 is an evolution of what we've been doing, but equally you could almost say it's started to become an industry revolution, because now more people are going to get access to that technology. And there's going to be free trials. We've got special discounts that we've announced this week as well. But probably the best thing is actually for Adrian to show everyone what it is and why everyone's getting excited about it, including yourself, David.
Yeah, so thank you, Jeff, for that. So we had a little glitch with audio, Jeff, at the beginning. So just so you know, but we managed to figure it out. We're back in game, all good. I wanted, just before we move on, just let us know what is exactly the deal at the moment with licensing, how much it costs, and on what systems can it run? Is there a trial? So like if I watch this webinar today, what is the deal? What can I do? Apart from these people, lucky 3 that are going to win the license, what is the rest of the audience can do?
So Mistika Ultima, like I mentioned before, is a Linux-based system, and pretty much that's a turnkey solution. So that's not in our online shop. So Mistika Boutique, though, is for Windows and Mac. It runs on pretty much any standard hardware, graphics cards, I/O cards. We support Ardour and Blackmagic I/O as well, that sort of thing. Typically, obviously, the better workstation you have, the faster everything runs. I mean, everyone kind of probably understands that, and you need good storage as well. So mustn't forget that part of it. But we've been pretty aggressive with how we've structured it. So you have a single 30-day license, a single annual use license as well. We have monthly subscriptions and annual subscriptions in there. And we also have 3 different versions. So there's the personal edition, which starts at 99 euros a month. So that's probably just over $100 a month for that one. And then that goes up to 299 euros a month for the professional immersive edition. So essentially that's all of the tools that you have inside Mistika, and that obviously includes all the ones for doing VR and stereo 3D as well. So, and our promotional price that we're announcing is that there's a free trial, a free 30-day trial of the software. We want people to give it a go and give us feedback. It's in an open beta stage at the moment, so that's the really important thing. Is we want people to try it and people to feedback their comments. But we've got a 50% off all the plans at the moment as well until the end of May. So hopefully everyone will be pretty happy with that price as well.
I think that this is like the minimum price that anybody actually should even think about. You have to commit to Mistika big time to learn it. It's a major change for anybody who gets into it. So I think this is actually what anybody would expect a software of that quality to do. But I think with your discount, it just makes it even more interesting for us. People now have time. Maybe there's more of us who want to try to learn it now while we're sitting at home. Maybe it's a good thing. Okay. Adrian, it's all yours now. So please, why don't you share your desktop and show us a little bit what is going on with the new stuff? I'm so curious to see.
Okay, so I think now it's sharing the screen, right? Okay, so basically we have here, this is the 10th version of Mistika, Mistika 10. We have just released it this week. And I'm going to show you not to focus on the color grading tools, because this version, in this version, we have focused on the color grading. Now, the end color is the core of Mistika, is the core of our technology. And now we have started with this version, a new line of development focused on color. So I'm going to talk about that. But just as a quick comment, of course, this is a finishing system, so you can combine color and visual effects and reviewing, editing, everything in this canvas here in a very integrated way, because we use this interface for managing everything really. So yeah, it's a really flexible tool for any kind of project for finishing. But in this case, we're going to focus on color because it's more interesting for this kind of meeting. So I have here in my time space, as you can see, it's a very unique time space. We will see some features of them during this presentation. I have here my master editing and a secondary editing, and I can have both of them in the same space combined. So I can just bring things from one side to another. I'm going to focus first in this editing here, in these shots. I have a mix of shots. This is, for example, a ProRes shot. This is a red file shot. Here we have the metadata to change anything if we want. I will use this shot for our grading. I have Sony raw files as well, with the metadata as well. So basically I have a small editing with several kind of clips. Even an EXR multilayer that we will leave for the end of the presentation, okay? So I'm going to take these shots. Again, I'm going to leave the EXR for the end. So I'm going to take only those ones. And here I'm going to use a color grade. As you can see, the color grade is an effect in the whole pool of effects of Mistika, which means that you can integrate the color grade with any effects in here. This is when I said that Mistika is a finishing tool, because color grading and visual effects are perfectly integrated. So in this case, I'm going to load my color grading here, and I'm going to go inside. There we go. So we have redesigned the whole color grading interface to make it easier and more accessible for new users and optimized for current users. We have included many new features, and I'm going to talk about those features. Of course, you can expect the basic tools in any color grading solution. We have the primaries with the lead, gamma gain, the secondary with bands, curves, key year, etc. So I'm not going to talk about those basic things. I'm going to talk about the unique stuff in Mistika compared with other solutions. So I'm going to start with this shot and start with the primary. As you can see, we have lead, gamma gain, and a fourth volume here, which is pretty cool, because at the end, it means that you can divide your range, the range of your image, in more control, so you have much better control of your image. I'm going to open one of my scopes to have my signal there. There we go. Okay, and the first thing I'm going to do is to contrast a little bit my image and saturate it, just basic adjustments. So something like that. Again, I'm going to put it this into white. And just to talk a lot about the fourth trackball here. Basically, you see that, well, now I'm putting the whites in the right level, but let's say that, for example, I want to put my whites a bit above the 1000 level, right? And now I want to bring back those highlights in a soft clip way. So we have this fourth wall for that. So this is the soft clip, and the soft clip is connected here to a pivot, a proper pivot for the soft clip. By default, it's at 50, but I can just, for example, move it to 70 or 80 or whatever. I can use these controls in here in a very easy way. Just put it in there, and with the soft clip, you see I can just recover those highlights without affecting anything in the rest of the signal of my image, which is great, especially for HDR workflows where you have more details on in those highlights. You can control them not only using the game but the soft clip to manage that extra detail. All right. Now I'm going to increase the saturation of my shot to something like that. Okay, that's fine. And normally, and this is just a personal approach, of course, what I normally do with this kind of images is the default looking with just contrast and saturation is not good for me. I try to neutralize the color to get like a more neutral starting point, and from there I start to make my grade. And the first thing I see in here is that, well, it looks like very yellowish for me, and I don't like it. I don't especially like it. So I'm going to neutralize that color. And for that, I can use a trackball, of course, like you probably normally do. But we have the printer steps in here, which is a pretty awesome tool for this kind of things, because it allows me to control the primary colors and the secondary colors by steps. By default, is increasing or decreasing those values in steps of one point, but I can select medium or quarter, which is really nice because this is an example of the level of accuracy that you get with Mistika. It's not that you change things in from 1 point to 1 point. You have like quite a lot of in between points to work in a much more accurate way. So in this case, I'm going to use the yellow just to decrease it. There we go. And just decrease it that way. And now I have a better looking image for me. Okay. This printer light works by default in offset mode, but I can just select here if I want to contrast or only affect the lift, or only affect, well, the black in here, which is the lift, or the white, which is the game. So basically full control of my range using those printer steps. We have included as well temperature and tint, and those are connected as well with this point. So I can just change the temperature from here using as well quarter of points. I'm going to increase it to 1 to see the changes in a much better way. There we go. So I can just by a step increase it, or by dragging my image. So yeah, both options are supported. Okay, so let's say that well, I like the overall color of my shot, but now, for example, my customer says, my clients comes to the color rooms and says, okay, I like the sky, I like the highlights, I like where the highlights are placed, but shadows looks a bit underexposed in here, and of course shadows are below the 0 level, so of course we have underexposed shadows. So I don't want to change anything in my highlights. I just want to control my shadows, keeping intact the sky in this case. Of course, we can just go to the qualifier and create a key to select the sky, or we can create a shape and isolate it if we want, but that's not really efficient. And the problem is, I'm going to create another vector. If we control the image with the lift in here, well, we can see that at the end, we are affecting quite a lot of my signal, because, well, this is the traditional map of primaries control. Of course, if I control the gamma, it's a power control, so I will affect all my signal as well. And I don't want to control the gain because, again, I want to keep my sky intact in here. So, and this is really unique in Mistika, we can change the behavior of the primaries by enabling the knee-soft control. With the knee-soft control, the soft clip change the behavior. Now it's a super wet control. And the great thing is this toggle here allows me to fix some parts of the image, so they are not affected by the control, by the change that I can make now. So I can just take this white pivot over here and just decrease the value to something like that, for example. See, this is just a very random adjustment, but well, I can see here that my highlights are there, so I will keep that part intact. Now, if I control the gamma, you see that the curve now is not affecting the part that is above my white level. So I can control in a really accurate way my range. In this case, I, for example, can control the lift without affecting those highlights that you can see in here, okay? So I can just select which parts of my image I want to keep intact and just control the rest of them to adjust them. This is really nice as well to create, for example, a soft clip for the shadows. So I'm going to create another vector just to show you how this works. And I'm going to enable again my knee soft, decrease my soft clip here, and I'm going to put my white level really in the bottom of my signal. So I'm going to control only this part. I'm going to keep intact the rest of my image here. So I can control my lift. And there you go. Now I'm making a soft clip only on the shadows, and I'm not affecting the rest of the shot. Now, the great thing is, because this change looks like really hard in here, if you take a look to the curve in there, well, that's because the knee soft is at 0. I can just set it in 20, for example, and now the transition is smoother, or 40, and you can just control the smoothness of that transition between this area that you are controlling and the rest of the signal. Okay. Now, another way to work with this shadow, for example, without affecting too much the rest of my signal, is to using my secondary controls, which are bands. Bands is a really nice tool in Mistika because it works very different compared with primary. Primary works in RGB, so of course, if we, for example, enable our vector scope, if we change the lift, we will change the saturation, obviously, because that's again the traditional math, the traditional color science behind the primary controls. But in bands, I have 5 trackballs, so I can divide my range in many controls. Again, I have a much better control of my signal thanks to that. And the great thing is that bands work in hue, saturation, and luma, so I can control only the luminance, see, without affecting the saturation of my shot. So that's really great when I need to control, or when I need to make that kind of changes in luminance without affecting the prominence of my shot. I'm going to come back to my RGB overlap to see this is my signal. And for example, here I can just control those shadows without affecting too much the rest of my range. Now, here, let's say that our client says, okay, I like now the shadows, they don't look too much underexposed, but they look maybe a bit desaturated. So give them some color, right? So I can just control the color from here, from the trackball, and let's move it to something more orange, magenta, something like that. Okay, a pretty basic example. Now at that point we can say, well, okay, that's fine, but it's affecting too much of my image again. And if we take a look to here to the curve, we see that the curve, this is always reacting to the changes that I do in the trackball. The curve is telling me that, yeah, I'm affecting almost from the shadows to the midtones, which makes sense considering the position of the pivots here. But I can control the shadows pivots here to move it up or down to limit the level of action of my trackball. So this allows me, again, a really nice control of my signal. As you can see, the controls are really easy. It's very simple to understand. Everything is shown in a very clear way. There is no hidden menus or anything. We have like a very visual controls to control everything, so you don't need to focus so much on numbers or these kind of things. If you want the numbers, like here in primary, we have the numbers as well, but it's very intuitive and very visual, all those changes. Now, the great thing of this tool, again, is I can just set the pivots wherever I want. So for example, here I can just set the pivot, my white pivot at 0.6 or 0.7, which is nice when you are working with HDR signals and your white level is in a different value rather than 1, so or 1000 in this case. So I can just put my white pivot wherever I want, and automatically all my 5 trackballs will be remapped to this new position of the pivots, which allows me again a really nice control, see, of the curve at any moment. Okay. Now, let's say that, okay, the contrast is fine, color of the ground here is fine. Now my client says, okay, I want to push a little bit more the blue of the sky or change the hue or whatever. Again, we have several solutions for that. The traditional one is maybe to go to the qualifiers, select the sky, and make any adjustment over it. But it's much easier to just go to fixed vectors. And this is a really beloved tool in Mistika, because you can change the hue, saturation, and luma of your primary and secondary colors in a really simple and visual way. And when you are working with your client in the color room, it's much faster to do this kind of adjustment. So he can just say in seconds the result. So in this case, for example, I can just take that blue and just increase the saturation with these two sliders. If I want to change the hue, I can just come to the hue slider and just change it to more magenta or to more cyan or maybe to more bluish. There you go. Now, the great thing of this tool is that it's really, really clean. It doesn't generate any noise. It just changes the result in a really nice and clean way. And again, it's really simple to use. So when you're working with a customer, is extremely useful. Another way to do this kind of changes, of course, using the curves, which is another traditional way to work. We have improved this panel in a huge way because now we have in the same panel the RGB curves, the saturation against saturation or luma against saturation, and the hue curves in the same space. So you can check in a very quick way what have you done in all those curves. And not only that, but we have included as well this scale button here to open the curves in a floating window that I can resize at any size and just control the pivots in a much accurate way. So I can control, let's create the basic S curve, okay, something like that. I can just, I'm just forcing quite a lot of the image to show this, but I can just add points in a very accurate way, as you can see, because I can always resize this to any size, and I can put this window wherever I want. So it's very flexible for making this kind of soft or very small changes to our image. Okay, and again, as I said,
Adrian.
Yep.
Adrian, sorry to interrupt. I think it's a good moment for me just to kind of ask you a few questions that came in from the audience. So just really wanted to kind of quickly just break on the presentation, just kind of come back to the audience a little bit. The first question that came through was, what about the B-roll support, the Blackmagic camera?
Blackmagic is on our roadmap. It's not in this version, but we will support it as soon as possible for sure.
And the second question is, what panels are supported? Because some users have precision panels. They were wondering if this was dropped or still working. What's the case with panels?
We support precision panels and all the tangent panels, and not only support them like giving them a default mapping and that's it. You can remap all of those panels as you wish, and even have different versions of your mapping depending on the kind of project that you want to do. Maybe you want to change the mapping depending on the project. So you can have different mappings and control them from the user perspective. So you can just change them at any moment.
Okay, so also interestingly, we have a Francisco Ramos with us in the audience. Yeah. You probably guys know him. Hi, Francisco.
Yeah. He's part of this redesign as well. He has helped quite a lot to do it.
I know. I did actually a show for Sky with Francisco years ago, something called Da Vinci or something like that. I remember it was a big Sky show. So Francisco wanted you just to show, there was a discussion how printer lights work, and Francisco mentioned that basically if you change printer lights, it affects also lift and gain. Can you maybe just show us how that works?
Yeah. Printer steps at the end is like it's a secondary control for the trackball in here. So if I, for example, control the red, I'm going to drag, you will see that what I'm doing is affecting the trackball. So it's another way to control the trackball by steps or by dragging. And if in this case, I'm making the offset, but I can just control, for example, the lift. So I'm now changing only the lift. I can just drag and I will make the change in a more interactive way, or just by steps up and down with the value that you set in here in 1, medium, or quarter. So it's really flexible. It's another way to control your trackball.
And then another question is, it's just curious probably, why do you use term vector instead of like secondary or whatever? Like where does the vector come from?
I think it's a mathematical decision from because at the end this works as a vector in the way that they are non-destructive. They can be combined. They work in parallel. All of those tools. So it's like it can be a layer. At the end, it's like a layer, but from the internal point of view, it works more like a vector, a color vector, really.
Okay. Peter just told me to turn down my volume a little bit. Hopefully, it's better like this. Peter, good to see you here. And actually, Peter also had a question. What about ProRes RAW support?
It's another format that, because we support the official Apple ProRes in any operating system, Windows, Mac, and Linux. Apple ProRes RAW is not supported yet, but we have the SDK and the libraries, and we will implement it as soon as possible again. Yeah, it's the only format from ProRes that is not supported yet, this version.
Okay, and then there was a question, what is happening with ACES? And guys, also I'm happy to say that we have a John Darrow with us here. So, John, good to see you. And of course, we are late time. So John was answering a little bit, but maybe Adrian, you can help a little bit explain what's the support for ACES.
Yeah, I'm going to use the XR multi-layer file to explain the ACES workflow during this presentation. But basically, we have here the unicolor to manage the mathematical transformations between the different. Let me open it in a quick way. So we have the input curve and the input gamut, output gamut, and output curve, and then we have the ACES ODD in here to make the transformation for the display transform. So I will show that with the XR.
Why don't you go straight away ahead and start showing us how this works with the XR files? Okay. I think this is a really interesting part.
All right, so I have here this EXR file. The first thing I'm going to do is to load the RGB layer of this file, because this file has multiple layers of information. So I will going to select here the render layer RGB. So we have this image here. This is a ACES linear file. Okay, so it will render with that information, and I'm going to build the ACES workflow with this particular shell. So first thing I'm going to do is to load the unicolor, and in the unicolor I'm going to select linear, which is the default value here, and AP0, which is the ACES linear color space for the color space of the input of this image. I'm going to transform the gamut, and then go to AP1 for my color grading, and ACES CCT is the curve that I'm going to use for grading. In Mistika, we always give you the flexibility of use the curve that you want for the grading. It's not a big deal, in fact. You can select any curve, but just for keeping the standard, I'm going just to select ACES CCT in here, okay? Now I'm going to put in here in the middle my color grade, and then finally I will add the ACES ODD, which is the transformation for the output. So in this case, I have to select my output from the unicolor. So it's ACES CCT and the AP1. And then for the output space, I have here the library from ACES for if you are working in HDR, PQ at 1000 nits, or HLG, etc. I'm going to select, just because we are streaming this, I'm going to select Rec 709, so we see the result in a much nicer way. So this is my color journey at the end. I have my color grade in between, and I make the transformations first from the linear ACES color space of my shot to something that I can use for grading, in this case AP1 and ACES CCT, the color grade in between, and then the ACES ODD for the output. The ACES ODD can be applied, the unicolor can be applied at any level, per shot, per frame, per amount of frames. You can use it per edit here. So you can, the time and space in Mistika is agnostic. You can apply it anywhere, really. And you can just manage your color management using these nodes, these effects. The unicolor is like the base of our color management. If you are working in ACES, then we combine it with the ACES ODD for the display transformation. Okay. All right. So there's another question.
No, we're good. You know what would be interesting? Do you want to show us? Oh no, you carry on. I'm waiting for my star feature, which is that the qualifier. You have the depth qualifier, so yeah, I can't wait for that.
All right, so I was just finishing with the curves in here that we have include some quick access to, for example, the colors in there for changing the sky. I can just enable the blue and automatically creating a point on the blue. And this same philosophy, we have applied this same philosophy, for example, in the qualifier in here, okay? So for the qualifier, I'm going to use this shot in here. And again, we have, the traditional hue, saturation, and luma qualifier, RGB keyer, 3D keyer to paint and select several areas, for example, let's paint and select the red. Let me enable the mode. I'm going to put the high saturate just to see better. So select the red in there, or cyan. So you can, in here, you can combine several hues to make a more advanced selection. But in this particular case, what I want to show you is the quick access for the hue, saturation, and luma. We have the primary controls and the secondary colors, but we have as well the skin tone access. So automatically when I press it, there you go. Now if we go to the on black, we are basically selecting the skin tone in a really fast way. From here now you can just control it to go to be more accurate, because of course this will depend of the shot, but this is like a quick access to select my skin tones in the shots. Now in this case, because it's getting as well some part of the breath, I can just use a shape to isolate the facing here. So I have here my shape panel. I'm going to select the sphere, the circle mode, and just create a shape over there. And just rotate, there you go, and add some softness. There you go. Something like that. I'm going to make something quick, and now I'm going to track this, okay? So I'm going to my tracker panel, enable my shape mode. Normally, when you're working fast with color, you leave the populate on a start. This will create automatically the tracking points, and then go forward and it will make the tracker. Just to show some functionality here, I will click in populate now, because this will show me the tracker points in there. And I can see that some of those points are in the microphone that the girl is using. And I can just take them and remove them. So in that way, I can just make sure that I'm not mixing tracking points, and I'm just using the ones that are for the skin, in this case for the face. So I'm going to click in go forward, and this will make the tracking. My system is not the most powerful one, guys, because of the circumstances. I'm using my own system, and it's well, pretty old. But yeah, well, the performance is not so bad in this case. Okay, as you can see, the tracking is the shape is moving with the face, is rotating, scaling, is keeping the is following the face in a nice way. So as we can see, there you go. We have here the face selected. I'm going to blur a little bit my selection, something like that, and I can just come back and go to my let's say primary or whatever to just control a little bit my colors here. Change the gamma, maybe lift to give for some shadows. Now you can just make the change that you want. Okay, so the qualifier has been improved in a way that everything is really simple to use. You have the 4 qualifier. We're going to talk about the multi-layer qualifier now in a very simple way. All the options from the qualifier are here. No hidden menus, no weird panels everywhere. Everything is really clean and very accessible. That was one of the goals of this new redesign. Okay, so let's go to the more well. I think this is a really interesting feature: the integration of the multi-layer in our color corrector. So I'm going to go back to my shotting here, my creator shotting here. Okay. And first thing I'm going to do with this shot is what I did with the previous shot. So I'm going to neutralize that kind of yellowish color. And instead of doing it with the printer steps, which we have seen now, we are going to use these 2 modes that we have in here for primary. So I'm quite sure that when you're working like so many hours in front of your shots with a big project, you don't want to find in the panels the knob that controls the offset or the level of the contrast. Sometimes it can be a bit tricky when you have so many buttons, like for example in the precision panels or the tangent arc. So we have created these 2 modes to change the behavior of the trackball, because at the end the trackball is your main working area. So I can enable, for example, the offset mode, and as you can see, these 2 trackballs change the behavior. Now this is lift offset and gain offset. If I control, for example, the lift, I'm controlling the gain as well. If I control the color, the chrominess of the shot, I'm controlling as well the RGB offset using my trackball. I can use the same thing with contrast. So if I enable the contrast mode, I have the lift contrast and gain contrast. So I can just do the same thing, but in opposites. I can create some contrast in color or in luminance. So again, this is really useful when you are working with your panels. So just enabling the mode, you can just focus on your trackball and continue the job. So in this case, I'm going to use, for example, the offset to neutralize a little bit this color here. There we go, something like that. All right. Maybe let's gain. There we go. Okay, so now I want to again change the color of my creature here. And here I'm going to use the information of my EXR multilayer by creating another vector. Go to my qualifier, and here I'm going to select the multilayer key. And the first thing I'm going to do here is to select the depth. So I'm going to select my creature based on depth, and I'm going to select the depth layer in here, and enable the highlight mode so we see it better. I'm going to put it in display. Now with this layer selected, I can just control this slider to select, there you go, my creature. Let me do it in a more accurate way. There you go. And now with the size, I can just control the size of my selection and the softness. That's it. Quite easy. Now I can just disable the highlight, and I can go, for example, to my bands, to my bands, and I'm going to change, for example, the hue of those colors of the red ones. This qualifier can be combined with the hue saturation and luma qualifier. So I can just come back in here and just select the red ones in a really fast way. There you go. I can enable the proportional mode in here to keep all the shadows and details. This will keep those details on the skin of the creature here. And then increase the value of my blur in there. There you go. Of my, increase the value of the blur. There you go. So now we can just disable the selection mode, go to bands, and I'm going to change the hue of that selection. I'm going to enable my sliders. This is another way to control the black hue, saturation, and contrast, midtones, hue, saturation, and contrast, and white, and the overall by a slider, so it's much more visual. And I can just change that color. There we go. It's a soft change, but it's pretty visible. I'm going to create a version of this so we can compare different versions. I can just maybe move it forward, another version, and another one with the default looking. Oh, sorry. There you go. There you go. Okay, so now I can just navigate between these old versions. Oh, with the panels, it's faster. Okay, I'm just showing this on the interface so you see where I'm selecting. But you can just select them from here. There is the shortcut, but at least you can see where I'm moving. So I can just save any amount of versions and just select the one that I prefer. So for example, let's select this one, the one. Okay. Now with this selection done, I can just change as well the interior part of the creature, which looks as well very yellowish. So the first thing I'm going to do here is, because I have my creature selected in this vector, so I'm going to use that selection again. So I'm going to duplicate this vector. There you go. I'm going to reset the adjustment in bands. And what I'm going to do is to go back to the qualifier, and instead of selecting the red, I'm going to select the yellow area. So there you go. As fast as with just one button, I'm just selecting that area there. So now I can just go to the, for example, primary, and change in gain, and just move it to maybe something more magenta. So I'm neutralizing the color. There we go. I'm just selecting the creature and changing the color of that. We can just see the difference that we are making in our shot. Okay. Now let's say that, for example, because I want to put some kind of flare that is coming from this corner over here, I'm going to relight my image. And I'm going to use another cool feature of the multi-layer toolset, which is, instead of selecting the depth, I'm going to select the directional light. And with the directional light, I'm going to select the right layer for that, enable my highlights. And there you go. Now I can just rotate and select the direction of the light of my shot. So for example, select it in there. Because I want to generate some feeling of the light that is coming from here for this corner over there, I can just rotate to have a more accurate approach to that. Okay, it's something like that. There you go. And with this selection, again, I'm going to blur it a little bit just to make it softer, and just come back to the primary, and I can just work on that selection, increasing, for example, the gamma, the gain, etc., etc. Okay. And as a final step for my grading here, I'm going to add some kind of glow that comes from here for my flare. I'm going to disable the scope. I don't need it anymore in this case. And I'm going just to create a quick shape, something like that. Soft the shape. There we go, and just apply some gain. gamma. Maybe I can move the shape a little bit more there. All right. Okay, so this is like my color grading done. I've just used the multi-layer tools. I'm combining with primary bands, etc., etc. Now I'm going to add a flare effects over there. And this is an example of how visual effects integrate with color. I'm using the same space, the same canvas. I don't need to switch between modes, between the color grading mode or the visual effects mode. Everything can be managed from the time space here. So I'm going to open my flare, just select my origin, move it there, for example, then go to my destination, move it here. I'm going to disable my ring, my rainbow, sorry. Normally disable it. And then go to my flares and maybe change the intensity to something more subtle. There you go. All right. And now if I need to, for example, add some grain over my image, I can just come to effects and I can use, for example, external plugins. For example, now we support the DVO toolset. So I'm going to use the DVO plugins to create that grain. And the grain and the plugins are integrated with the effects in the same way that the native effects of Mistika is everything controlled from here, from the time space. So I can just open my grain tool, automatically adding some grain. I'm going to increase the value so it's more visible. Let's put a level 3. There you go. It's now much more visible. And working in the black and white instead of RGB. This is quite a lot of grain, the one that I added here, but at least it's more visible. So as you can see, this is a full workflow of a color management integrating with color grade, with a visual effects, flare effects, in external plugins, everything managed from here for the time space. So that's really, really cool. It's an example of
wow. Thank you for that. I mean, this last feature with the depth keyer, I think definitely or layer keyer. How is it called again? Help me.
It's multi-layer, and the great thing is fully integrated with the rest of the toolset. So you don't need to make any weird adjustments or try to combine many effects to get those selections. It's really simple, really intuitive. You have all the parameters in here.
Excellent. So I also just want to send my shouts to New York, to Mark Peterson, who's also joined us. Mark, good to see you here with us. And I just wanted to, there's a couple of questions from the audience. Maybe do you mind if I ask? I think we need to clear, whether this multi-layer can work on anything else than like a CGI shots. You're not able to calculate depth at the moment unless it gets brought in via a render, basically from. How does it work?
Exactly. This is working because it's a CGI shot, which that doesn't mean that you cannot use the multi-layer toolset with shots that doesn't have any kind of this kind of information. Because we have here the layer list. This layer list allows you to combine selections. So, for example, this workflow was designed in ParkRoad. They use it for the production there, and they basically create shots in Nuke. With selection done by the compositors, and then they bring those EXR multi-layer with those selections done in Mistika, and you can just open here. You have here your layers, so you have all the list of selections done by the compositors. You can select them, combine them in the way that you want. You have the Boolean operation here. You can make add different shapes or make subtract or whatever, and then use that selection with the color tools. So it's really, really flexible. It's just the EXR multi-layer allows quite a lot of flexibility, and we use that flexibility fully integrated with our color toolset. It can be used as well for visual effects because we have a proper effect for that. It's called a spatial key. It has the same functionalities, but more orientated to compositing. But what we have done is just take those functionalities and integrate them in the color toolset. That was the design. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, conform is always improved, because at the end we get feedback from our customers. So it's basically impossible to say that the latest version is working like the previous one, because the newer version is better in conforming, because we have just check some issues with some customers when we have fixed them. So it's much better. Now, from the comparison mode, we have several ways to do it. We can use, for example, let's load. I'm going to load this. Let me duplicate this shot. For example, I'm going to group this to make it easier, and maybe I'm going to make just a quick color grade change so we can compare one at the other. Okay, there you go. Now I can, if it's for checking if everything is okay, etc., you can just, for example, use the white, and there you go. Now you have, I'm going to reset the red. You have both shots compared. Now there is a tooling here that, well, many Mistika users use them as well for compare. It's not, it wasn't designed for that, but it's basically the stereo 3D node, because at the end the stereo 3D node sees this shot in here like the left eye, the other one like the right eye, and you have all the options here to switch between modes. So you can enable, for example, the difference, and this will tell you the difference automatically between the shots. So if you have framing issues between shots, you can just enable this mode and fix them. You have the side-by-side as well if you want just to check in that way. To switch between left and right, you can just change it from here. So there are different ways to do the comparison mode. And as I said, yeah.
Good. I also, there was another question. Let me see who just asked this. I think it's Edgar. He wanted to know, how would you deal with a job of trimming down HDR shots to SDR? How would you approach that task?
Yeah, we have. Let me show it, for example, with this shot. Let me open it. Okay, there we go. We have several ways to do it. Of course, we support Dolby Vision, so that's a way to manage projects between HDR and HDR. If Dolby Vision is not the tool that you want to use, you can use, for example, the Unicolor or ACES workflow to manage, for example, your output in HDR and HDR. So let me show you with this particular shot. I'm going to build my workflow here. So I'm going to duplicate my shot, and I'm going to select, for example, here, I'm going to select 16-bit ACES, all right? And from here, I'm going to create a Unicolor, and I'm going to select here the color space and the gamma curve that I want to use for grading. Again, you can use anything. You can use even log-C if you're working with, if you're working with red files. That doesn't matter. Again, I'm going to keep the standard workflow using ACES CCP and MP1 ACES for the grading. Then load my color grade. I'm going to rename it and say it HDR master, for example. Right, and I'm going to add, for example, another one that is going to be the SDR. Okay, and then on top of it, I can add, for example, 2 ACES ODP, and then one of them is going to transform my signal to from ACES CCP and AP1 ACES to, let's say, my Rec 2020 1000 nit PQ as an example of HDR work. And the other one is going to be my Rec 709 transformation. So ACES CCP and AP1, and then Rec 709. All right. Now the great thing is, okay, now this is evaluating everything, so that doesn't make any sense. But if I have, for example, 2 outputs, I can use send my image to a first output, which is going to be, for example, is my HDR monitor, and the second signal, the second eye in this case, to an SDR monitor, and I can work in both at the same time. So, for example, I can say, okay, the SDR bypass left. Okay, so it's only be seen in the right monitor, and the same thing with my output for the SDR, which is bypass left, and the other one is going to be bypass right and HDR master bypass right. So I can have both signals working at the same time, and I can make the grading in both gradings at the same time and compare the results with 2 monitors if I want. I can apply this ACES ODP and applying this in the time space, but sometimes is, well, most of the times is much easier to apply them as a display filter. The display filter is basically like a generic effect that is on top of your timeline all the time. So you don't need to manage it here in the time space, but it's always affecting here. So for output transformations and this kind of stuff is really, really nice. It's really good. So this is an example of how to do it. If you prefer to just work, for example, in your HDR master, for example, there, you can apply a unique color to transform your HDR master to SDR, and then use a secondary SDR grading to adjust those highlights and the contrast and have your final delivery version. Yeah.
Very good. And then there was just a question about the DVO. Is it the full clarity, or exactly what is it available at the moment? Is there anything else coming? So just a little explanation on that, please.
This is right now the plugins that are supported by Mistika from DVO. Is the brick wall, chroma, the clarity one, pixel, regrain, and sharpen. So this is the package that is now available for Mistika. This case.
Yeah, that is probably worth mentioning that we obviously been working with Digital Vision World on implementing these DVO tools inside Mistika. But the exciting thing about this is that they're actually going to be available through the SGO shop on a subscription basis, starting from €49 a month. So previously, we would have access to this type of image processing, in this way. But now you can have this in Mistika, which we think is a very exciting opportunity for everyone.
Yeah, actually, you know what? This almost would be like a good solution for archiving. You could remove dirt and scratch with Mistika, a little bit repaint, and then do. I mean, this is like a serious, like a archiving kind of, restoration machine on a monthly subscription. I don't think we had that before.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing that you can do is if you combine the DVO tools inside, say, a display filter that Adrian was talking about earlier, you can then use that inside Mistika workflows. So you're not using it inside a creative tool like Mistika Boutique here, but you're using it in your media management and deliverable solution. So we think, again, that is going to be some exciting opportunities for everyone.
Yeah, this Mistika workflow, I think, Jeff, we're going to have you come back again and we're going to do a feature on that, because I really think this is a very, very interesting tool, like, to look at. But unfortunately, we're a little bit like, running out with time at the moment. Adrian, tell us, is there anything else that you definitely want to show us that you missed, or any feature that we should see before we say goodbye?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a question about talking about the reconform and that process. We now have something that we think is much better than the reconforming. And this is why I have this like a secondary version of my edit here. So this is my master edit, or my main first conform. And I have some adjustment over there. And I want to adapt all this work into here as fast as possible, of course. So let's say that this is my 60-second version of my commercial, and this is my 15 seconds or whatever. So I can just take all of it, copy, select my destination, and here I'm going to select match and paste. And in the match and paste, I have several options to match my pasting here. So we have the media source path. I'm going to enable it by default. I have the timecode range. I'm going to enable it as well, because if you remember, well, we made a tracker. So I want to use that timecode as well for match the tracker. We have several options for the effects, replace the effects that we had, but we don't have any effects in here, so that's fine. And then with the animation options, ignore the keyframes or keep the original keyframes, or scale the keyframes to the new duration of the shot. In this particular case, I'm going to keep original keyframes for the tracker. So I'm going to click in paste, and there you go. Now everything is adapted in just one go. I can just come to here, for example, and if we check the shape is following the face of the lady without any issues. Same thing in this secondary cut. As you can see, the shape keeps the track. And if we come back to my creature shot in here, we have the creature with the plugins. All the plugins works in the same way. So in a really fast way, you can just copy and paste. So if you get another XML or EDL or AEF, you can just conform it, copy, paste, and continue the job. It's that simple.
That is really important. That's the reality of a job. There's always a new version, right? Never call your cut final, they say. I wanted to also just one more question squeeze in. And I remember, when I worked with Mistika. By the way, the reason why I worked with Francisco back on the day on this Da Vinci job was because I couldn't learn it. I just didn't have time to learn it, and Francisco is just 100 times better than me, so I would just let Francisco operate. But I remember that we had a little struggle sometimes, like when we wanted to compare versions or before and after, or like if we had to copy something and then you wanted to copy only certain elements, not all elements, from one clip to another, is there any improvement on that?
You can you can always select from here which part you want to copy for your grade. So in this case, I can just select the grade inside or primary or whatever, just copy the frame or the curve if you want the animation, come to any other shot and just paste it. Sorry, clipboard paste selected. So now is automatically is applied. Now there is a different version. For example, if you are making any change in here, let's increase, for example, the saturation. Okay, make a change. There we go. Now I can just use my here. I can just go to show the initial state. So I can just navigate between show the initial state and the new one to see the changes like a before and after change. For example, here I create another layer, make any change, and then show the initial state, and automatically goes back and forth between what the change that you did and the new situation. You can preview, for example, let's say that you want to bring something from this shot in here. I can just keep it pressed. I see the result. If I release it, nothing applies. It's just a preview. But if I keep it pressed and up, it's like a gesture, then I apply the color correction. So we have like several ways to bring color corrections and compare.
Very good, very good. I think this was fantastic. And you know, Adrian, actually, guys, can we all at home put our hands together for Adrian, please? You know, he did a great
Thank
job.
you very much.
Ooh. You know, in an hour, you showed us everything that was important. You know, it was very good. Thank you all for dialing in. You know, I think this was a very, very, you know, good, you know, I'm impressed. I really like it. You know, for me, that kind of depth feature was definitely the highlight. And in general, I think, you know, there are some tools in here I feel I could, you know, really use, you know, a lot. So I'm so happy this is all going in the right direction and to see Mistika thriving. Thank you, Jeff, for being here. And, you know, I really appreciate, you know, for the free licenses you gave to people. I just really wanted to ask you now, can you give me one number between 1 and let me just check where we are right now. So we have 829. So basically, give me one number between 1 and 829, please.
222.
222. Very good. Very good. And then Eva, can you give me one number between 1 and 829, but it can't be 222, right?
I'll go with 10 as Mistika 10.
Okay, very good. And then Adrian, can you pick one number as well for us?
Yeah, 561.
561. Perfect. So, okay, I'm going to look up later who the lucky winners are and, you know, who managed to, you know, bag themselves €1,000, you know, euros worth of Mistika license. Thank you guys for that. Thank you for every help. It's great. I really appreciate everything. Thank you all, everybody else, for dialing in. You know, I think we are doing this really because you guys are dialing in, and you know, if you find it useful, you know, please come back. We are going to do another one in a month's time, but there is potential that we will do some more meetups, mini meetups in the meantime. So yeah, stay tuned. You know, we'll definitely let you know, like through our social media or through mailouts, what is coming up and what's happening. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. And yes, I think, you know, through SGO's website, you can get in touch with the SGO team. They'll be ready to answer your questions and help you. Download the trial. If you have a little bit time, install it, play with it, and, you know, good luck with it, and happy grading, everybody. And I'm looking forward to see you all soon next time. Bye. See you all. Bye, Jeff.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
Jeff. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.